2020 was quite the year, and not a good one at that. The COVID-19 pandemic put a screeching halt on most of my 2020 plans, and I was disappointed that I didn't get to ride some of the coasters that I was going to in 2020. Despite my plans being completely stopped, I still managed to get to a couple of parks, ride some of my favorite coasters, and even managed to go on a trip that I did not think I would do. So with all of this, let's count down the top 5 coasters that I rode in 2020. Before we go into the list, I want to give you some perspective of how big my 2020 was going to be versus how small it ended up being. My original plan for 2020 was to go to Cedar Point in May with my best friend Nelson. Then I was going to go to Hershey Park in June and ride Candymonium on its opening year. I might have also gone to Dorney Park, and I had Six Flags and Lake Compounce passes, so clearly my 2020 was going to be huge and probably the best year for coasters yet. Oh, how wrong I was. My 2020 ended up with 3 trips to Lake Compounce, 2 trips to an alpine coaster, and 1 trip to Six Flags Great Adventure. That's it. I didn't gain any new credits in 2020, and I didn't even ride a total of 10 coasters. After all of this, though, I still really enjoyed my 2020 season, despite how small it may have been. Before we get into the top 5, I have 2 honorable mentions. These are Thunderbolt Mountain Coaster at Berkshire East Ski Resort in Charlemont, Massachusetts, and Nitro at Six Flags Great Adventure in Jackson, New Jersey. First of all, if you've seen any of my videos, then you know exactly how I feel about Nitro. To me, Nitro is just a big forceless waste of space, and that's why it didn't make the top 5. I still enjoy Nitro for its views, speed, and comfortable restraints, but this ride just overall isn't that good. The other honorable mention that I have is Thunderbolt Mountain Coaster. This is just an alpine coaster, and there are hundreds of these around the world, and there's really nothing special to this one. I do enjoy the feeling of soaring through the woods, and on this coaster, the view from the straight track right before the final helix is amazing. The coaster may be one of many, but it has some good elements, like the 2 helixes and the double down with some insane floater airtime, and lots of turns and good laterals. Taking the number 5 spot is Wildcat at Lake Compounce. Believe it or not, this is actually one of my favorite roller coasters. Opening in 1927, the coaster has clearly stood the test of time. Wildcat has definitely become very rough over the years, but it's not unbearable like most people say it is. I rode this coaster twice in 2020, and it was not good either time. I don't actually know why I like this coaster, to be honest, but I just do. The ride has an extremely bland layout, with really only one good moment, and it's an insane ejector hill after the coaster's first turn. This element, although very rough, manages to eject you out of your seat. This alone may be the reason why I like the coaster. Wildcat is just a fun ride, and since the coaster is down very often, I'm glad that I got to ride it in 2020. Number 4 actually goes to the coaster directly across the midway from Wildcat. It's Phobia Fear Coaster. I think I rode this coaster more than any other in 2020, and I definitely took more pictures of it than any other coaster. And that's simply because it's a great ride. Premier Ride Skyrocket 2 model has seen lots of success since the first one opened in 2012 at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom as Superman Ultimate Flight. We've seen 9 of them built everywhere from China to Germany, Mexico, and of course America. The launches on these roller coasters are very good, and the third one pulls a lot of forces when you pull up into the Heartline roll. Another cool thing is that Phobia has lap bars, which are just awesome. These restraints are pretty comfortable, and they make the Heartline roll so much better. I'm glad that I have one of these coasters at my home park, because the next closest one to me is all the way in Virginia, and these rides are just great. Coming in at number 3 is another launch coaster, but this one is much taller and much faster. It's King Dakota at Six Flags Great Adventure in Jackson, New Jersey.
King Dakota is the definition of extreme height. There are none taller. It is the king of tall rides.
Words cannot describe my love for the adrenaline rush that this coaster gives. I just can't believe that a 17-second long ride is probably more exhilarating than a 4-minute coaster. But it is. This coaster's launch is like nothing else. Well, except those, I guess. This launch takes your breath away, and you do not get it back until you're at the top of the 456-foot top hat. It's only another second, though, until you plummet down to the ground in a downward twist. I was able to ride this coaster 3 times on my most recent trip to Great Adventure, 1 in the front, 1 in row 2, and 1 in row 6, all of which were equally amazing. I'm pretty grateful to have this coaster kind of close to me, since the only other one of its kind is Top Thrill Dragster, which is a 7-hour drive away from Connecticut where I live. The second best coaster that I rode in 2020 was Boulder Dash at Lake Compounce. This Custom Coasters International terrain coaster is often considered to be one of, if not the best coaster by this manufacturer. Many people complain about the coaster's roughness, but I love the roughness and I think that it adds to the ride. And before Nelson comments about Magnum's roughness is much worse than Boulder Dash's in my opinion. Anyways, this coaster's layout is amazing. It's all airtime hills and laterals until you hit the turnaround, which has the most laterals of the ride, and then after that, it's just airtime until you hit the brakes. The best airtime moments on this coaster are probably the drop, the one large drop during the first half, and the second hill after the turnaround, which are all better in the back seat. This coaster is honestly flawless in my opinion, and I haven't been on a single coaster that's quite like it. This is my personal favorite coaster, and I'm so grateful that I got to ride it in 2020. I've mentioned Six Flags Great Adventure several times in this video, but I haven't yet mentioned what is often considered to be the best coaster at the park. As you may have expected, the best coaster I rode in 2020 was El Toro. I think that this coaster has gone down in my rankings quite a bit since my previous trip to Great Adventure in 2018. The ride has developed a terrible roughness, and that really puts it back in my opinion. The thing is though, the airtime on this coaster more than makes up for any roughness. This ride is obviously known for being an airtime machine, and anyone who says otherwise is just plain wrong. Even the weakest hill on this coaster has more airtime than the strongest moment on the B&M Hyper in the same park, and the strong moments on this coaster have ejector like nothing else I've ever experienced. Six Flags Great Adventure is doing some work on the track this off-season, so maybe they'll fix some of the rougher parts of the coaster. I rode El Toro twice in 2020, and both times were amazing. I think that of all the coasters I rode in 2020, this was by far the best. Well, that was it. Those were the 5 best coasters that I rode in 2020. I'm glad that during the absolute hell that this year was, I was still able to ride some amazing roller coasters like Boulder Dash, King Dakota, and El Toro. Though my 2020 season may not have been very eventful, I still enjoyed it so much, and it's one of my favorite seasons that I've had in my lifetime. Tell me down in the comments below how your 2020 season went and what parks you went to, and since you've made it to the end of the video, consider subscribing because it would mean a lot. Anyways, this is CT Coasters, signing off.